Let's be honest for a second. How many times have you heard someone say of another, oh, so and so is doing well? And by this, they mean middle class. But then, what does this really mean? What does this whole thing about the middle class really mean? Is the middle class life about driving a decent car, renting a nice apartment, eating out on weekends, and paying your kids' school fees without stress? Or is it just a constant hustle to look like you've made it, while quietly you're trying to survive without drowning? In today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on what it actually costs to live the so called middle class life in Ghana. And the reason for this is that through the many episodes we put out, we've used the term middle class to define the average standard of living of many Ghanaians. And unfortunately, for many, the definition of the middle class is not very clear. And our goal today is to bring clarity. And trust me, real estate is right at the heart of this. So then, let's dive in. First things first, who are we talking about when we say the middle class? Well, it's not as straightforward as you may think, and it's just like the case for who a youth is. And for many people, they consider themselves youths once they feel young and energetic. But then the defined age range for the youth as set by the United Nations is between 15 years and 24 years. So if you're 28 and counting yourself as a youth, you probably may want to step out of the queue and find a spot. But before you feel old already, we've generally dialed down on some of these definitions to accommodate more people. So you'd see that some places will define a youth as someone between the age range of 15 all the way up to 35 years. So there's room for many young people, many young fathers and mothers to still count themselves as youths. Anyways, let's get back to discussing the middle class. Most people who identify as the middle class in Ghana earn somewhere between 4,000 cedis and 15,000 cedis a month. But before we build on this, let's make some considerations. In Ghana, it's quite difficult to classify people into the middle class on the basis of their earnings or their incomes alone. And based on some observations, here's why the middle class classification isn't as straightforward. First, we have to consider that we have an informal sector dominance where a large part of Ghana's economy operates informally. So we have incomes that fluctuate over time and also vary widely. And these incomes are often not documented. And this makes it very hard to define the middle class based on just the income coming through. Secondly, there's the regional disparities, such that the cost of living differs greatly between, let's say, Accra and other areas of the country, or maybe some rural areas. And even a classic comparison between Accra and Kumasi makes for a good case, where the same amount of money can afford you more in Kumasi compared to Accra. But then it's the same Ghana we're in, and it's the same amount of money. So what counts as the middle class income in one region may not support the same lifestyle in another region. We also need to look beyond income. Now, the middle class in Ghana and even globally isn't defined by money alone. We need to consider the level of education, occupations, access to amenities, and overall financial stability, or more like a sense of economic security. So, in a sense, our definition of the middle class can be very subjective. So you'll find out that those who end up working in the middle class will be in sectors like banking and finance, telecommunications, tech. And by tech, you're looking at software developers, database administrators, cybersecurity experts. And you also find people in the middle class working in the oil and gas industry, some in the civil service or government agencies, and also in education. And a good chunk work in the private sector, and you'll find some running businesses or doing some consulting or freelance work. And don't forget that many also work in the informal sector. And what ties at my heart is that many Ghanaians appear to be at the lower range of the middle class. I may get it wrong or I may be wrong, but then I don't think that the middle class, most of the people in the middle class make up to 10,000 cedis a month. And as I said, I could be wrong, but then what does your data indicate? Drop it in the comments and let's discuss. So these are the people who are driving fairly used Toyotas, maybe a Hyundai or a Honda, living in gated rentals and all that. And you'll find that many of them dream of buying land in locations often close to the city, just because the prices in the city are crazy. And these people end up juggling diverse responsibilities and still try to save throughout all these. And from the outside, it looks like everything's okay. But on the inside, there's a lot of pressure and the pressure is real. So let's do some quick math. And please don't let this stress you. a little number running here and there. We're just running some numbers for a good perspective. And please don't let this stress you. So let's look at housing. Now, if you're going to rent a decent two-bedroom apartment in a secure average area, you're looking at somewhere between 2,000 Ghana cedis to about 4,000 Ghana cedis a month. And remember that landlords want 1 to 2 years rent advance, and so you will end up dropping about 25,000 Ghana cedis all the way up to 50,000 Ghana cedis upfront just to move in. And if you're buying a house, be ready to put up about, say, $75,000 to about $200,000 for that house. And yes, dollars. Now let's consider school fees for the kids. Private basic schools can cost around 3,000 cedis to about 10,000 cedis a term, and that's just basic school. And international schools charge in thousands of dollars a term, and probably that will be someone's annual salary in just a term. Now let's look at transportation. If you're driving a car, you can budget at least 1,500 Ghana cedis a month for fuel alone. And when you add maintenance, your servicing, insurance, and repairs, you probably know where you're going. And if you do Uber or Bolt daily, your monthly cost could be probably higher. And you would think that Trusky will save you some money, but then it's not entirely cheap. And as you see, the middle class is evolving and more people want convenience, privacy, and all that, and also an improved standard of living. So Trusky may no longer be an option. Now let's look at groceries and lifestyle. A modest grocery run for a family of four can set you back about 1,500 to about 3,000 Ghana cedis every month. And then you factor in things like your internet data, DSTV, weekend outings, takeouts, events, and of course, supporting family, and the list goes on. And by the time you're done doing all the math, even a 10,000 Ghana cedi salary feels like, it's just passing through you. You may easily be living paycheck to paycheck and literally hand to mouth. Now, let's bring this home, literally. Now, for most middle-class Ghanaians, housing is the biggest financial burden. And if you can't buy in Central Accra, well, let's be honest, most people can't even afford in Central Accra. That means that you'll end up renting in a decent area that still costs you a fortune. Or you may end up building outside Accra, maybe like Oibi, Amasaman, and beyond, and you have to deal with traffic, bad roads, and also long commutes. Many are stuck renting for 5 years, some up to 10 years, or even more. And this is because saving for land and building feels almost impossible. And as you're saving, let's say the little you can, inflation is also eating into your savings, and the cost of living keeps going up. And this can feel like the dream will never come to life. Some people start building, but then they are not able to finish. So you end up seeing a case where people have half-done houses somewhere in town, and you're still living and renting in another part of town. Others may finally buy, but then it may be with a heavy mortgage. And if the city misbehaves, you're in trouble. Now, let's take the case of what's happening at the moment. At the beginning of this year, the cedi to the dollar exchange rate was somewhere around 15 Ghana cedis. And as of today, that rate has dropped to 13 cedis, 50 pesos. And this is good news for those who are paying mortgages denominated by the dollar. Because if formerly 15 Ghana cedis was going to get you a dollar, now all you need is 13 cedis, 50 pesos. So in a sense, that takes a little stress off. And when you consider this, the opposite is also true, such that when the cedi falls against the dollar, you will end up having to cough up more cedis to offset your dollar mortgage. And you may be asking, if this is the case, why are people not taking cedi mortgages? Well, the interest rate on the dollar mortgage is about 11 to 13%, and that on the cedi mortgage is about 21 to 23%, or even more, depending on where you bank. In all, you can clearly see that real estate becomes both a milestone of success and also a mountain of stress. So you can tell for yourself, real estate ties all these things together, and you cannot really define the middle class without defining the standard of living with relation to real estate. Now, talking about the stress, let's take a quick look at the invisible pressure that the middle class often have to deal with. As a middle-class Ghanaian, you're expected to dress well, speak well, live in a decent neighborhood, drive a clean car, even if it's a second-hand car, and you're expected to send your kids to good schools and all that. You have to support your family, and you still have to save and do your investments and all that. You're basically playing economic gymnastics every month. and it's not always sustainable. Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's say one health challenge or one emergency, one layoff or one major expense, and your entire plan will come crashing. Some people may stop building as a result, and others may miss out on rent deadlines. Some may even end up quietly selling off some property that they may be holding on to just to survive. But because the middle class sounds good, no one wants to say all these things out loud. No one wants to talk about all the stresses, the pressures, and all that the middle class Ghanaian is having to deal with. So where do we go from here? Well, this episode is not to scare you, not at all. It's just to help you see the reality on the ground and also to help you plan smarter, because the more you know, the better the decisions you can make. Now, if you're renting or you're building, work with the real numbers. Forget about the vibes. I mean, the vibes will always be there, but then know that you're not here to please anyone, and you know that for yourself. You're not here to please anybody. So do what works for you. You may also want to consider sharing your building cost with your partner. That is, if that works for you, or you may probably bring in someone who is from the outside and someone who can partner with you to see your vision come to life. Now, no matter what happens, please don't kill yourself by trying to chase flashy things here and there. The most important things are not very tangible, and some of these things can be your comfort, your peace of mind, your security, and all that. So, beyond chasing all these flashy things and all that, protect yourself, don't kill yourself. Chase the things that really matter, the things that will define your quality of life beyond, let's say, money. Now, if you're a developer, you need to look beyond luxury. You need to help the costs by looking beyond just the high-end projects that will bring you a lot of good cash. Middle-class Ghanaians need affordable housing that are well located, so you may want to consider that as well, and not just settle for all the high-end projects that will bring you some good cash. Sometimes you have to just do it for the cost. Now, on the side, still for developers, you may want to explore some creative financing, and you probably would consider rent to own options, some shared ownership payment plans, and just some structures that will be very kind to those in the middle class. Middle class life in Ghana can look very good on social media, but then behind the filters, it's full of very complex choices, silent struggles, and constant planning. And real estate happens to be a big part of this story. And this is where you'd see that a lot of dreams either will take root or they will get derailed. So be wise, be realistic, and build with clarity. If this episode spoke to your experience, do well to share with someone who may find this useful. And of course, let's keep the conversation going in the comments. But I want to ask, what does your middle class life really cost you month in, month out? Like I hinted some time back, we'll be bringing in some industry experts to discuss diverse topics, and from architecture to home insurance to security and many, many more topics that we haven't yet discussed. So do well to subscribe to the channel if you already haven't, to be one of the first people to see all the new episodes that will be coming up. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'm Desmond Kafui, and I'll catch you in the next one.